After a week off, I am ecstatic to be back. I took Mother's Weekend off from interviewing, and then I took the following weekend off to help with Hannah Demos live from her basement concert. That was an experience, and I wanted to apologize to all the Instagrammers that watched the feed in the wrong direction for the first 15 minutes. A lot of other things did not go according to plan, but it's building blocks for all the shows going forward. But if you like what you heard, even if you chimed in for a couple minutes, check her music out on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube for original music. So she writes her own stuff. That's pretty awesome. Prior to the break, I was starting to build a routine up for the show. And routine is so important with the world how it is that it gave me a sense of normalcy. So if you've been keeping up with the show, first off, thank you. And you might have noticed that my first three guests have all been male, but that changes today as I'm so happy and so ecstatic to announce my first female guest in Kirsten Krull from Rochester, New York. Kirsten and I have never met in person, but I reached out to her through social media, and she agreed to the interview. So I'm very appreciative to her for talking with some guy on the West Coast. We hit a wide array of topics, going from a conversation and a presentation she had in seventh grade that changed her life to hosting multiple shows during college and most recently graduating while the world is in a lockdown. So it was a great conversation. She's very passionate. She's very driven, and I really enjoyed talking with her. So I really hope that you guys enjoy the conversation, the chat that I had with Kirsten Krull.
It is a very special day in Keoni Chat's early program. I have my first female guest, Kirsten. I've been trying to make sure I say this correctly. How is it? It's Kirsten Krull, correct?
Yeah, Kirsten Krull. You got my first name right, which most people don't.
It took a lot of practice to say it over and over, Kirsten, because I just gotta, you names get butchered often. Now, how often has it been butchered for you?
Well, not so much recently because I haven't been seeing people, but when I'm usually at work or just out and about getting to meet people, it gets butchered a lot. I've heard it all.
You know, yeah, I've been called. So you say my name, Keoni. I've heard Peony. I heard Keanu, which I was almost named Keanu Reeves after the
That's what I
actor.
thought of.
My mom was like, you know what? I want you to have your own life. Let's give you something else. I was like, thanks, Ma. Doing me a solid.
A unique, different.
Yes. Unfortunately, though, there's a whole lot in the neighborhood. What, that's okay. We have our own blocks. We're spread out nicely. So you are a recent graduate of St. Cloud University. Can you kind of tell me about the process of when Corona started and then kind of getting your mind adjusted to, finishing out classes online and all that?
Well, it was interesting because right when things kind of started going downhill, we were just on spring break. So I'm trying to jog my memory a little bit. But yeah, so I was just, hanging out in St. Cloud. It was the weekend right before spring break was to start, and I was just out and about with a group of my friends. Everything was completely normal. And then I had to go to the hockey center to go film something, and my advisor was there, and he was talking about how the university was already talking about making plans to switch everything to online classes for the rest of the semester. And I was like, oh, like that, like at the time it seemed a little drastic, but the U of M was also, they extended their spring break by a week. And so our university ended up doing the same thing. And so at first I kind of thought my advisor was just being a little paranoid, because at moments he kind of can be that way. But then as things started playing out and it escalated quickly, then I decided to just pack a few things, a couple bags from my apartment in St. Cloud, come home to Rochester, because I also don't get to come home very often. It's about 2.5 hours away, and I had a job up in St. Cloud and was just busy with a bunch of different things at school, so I just never got to come home too often. So I thought this would be a good time to. But when I was packing my stuff, I didn't know how long I would be gone for. And then, things just started escalating quicker and quicker, and then it was confirmed we weren't going to be coming back to in-person classes this semester. And So then at that point too, my job got closed down as well during the pandemic. I worked at a restaurant, so I was the first one to kind of get laid off, if you will. And so, yeah, from there, just stayed down in Rochester, then made the decision I'm not going to be going back to St. Cloud because I'm graduating, so I should move out of my apartment. And then, online classes were a little bit of a struggle, I will say, just because I'm not one who has a great focus on one thing and I get distracted super easily. So being at home and not being able to be forced to focus in a classroom setting was a little difficult, but it was an experience.
Yeah, I did one online class, kind of wrap up my degree, and I was busy with work, so it was super hard to stay focused. And then even when like you start slipping a little bit, you're just like, oh, how do I fix this? Where do I go? So
Slippery slope really quick.
yeah. And you and we both have that same, because I got journalism communications, you got the mass communications degree. We still have that kind of class loads where we need to talk to people, we need to interact with others. So what was that kind of process like? Because I know for me, I had a lot of group projects, kind of coordinating them and sitting at a table together is easier. How did you work around that?
Well, for me, it's actually funny because I finished all of my major classes, I think, at the end of the first semester of junior year. So I did all of those right away. And so I didn't necessarily have any more mass communications classes left. Now it was all just finishing my marketing minor and one general class. So marketing classes were really tough because for me, that was outside my comfort zone. My brain isn't necessarily wired that way for business. So credit to those whose brains are. But for me, it was a stretch. But for a lot of my friends, their group projects or presentations, I think they weren't assigned any new projects per se. They were just finishing up what they had started right when school got put on pause. But a lot of Zoom meetings that our university did. So it was interesting kind of how to configure how to work classes that weren't supposed to be online.
Yeah. And, graduating college is such a big thing. I was lucky enough to, be able to experience the whole parade of it all. And unfortunately, you weren't able to be a part of that. What did your family do to kind of celebrate the moments? And I did remember seeing you on social media. You had your little graduation ceremony walk, and it was fantastic. You've been a social media savant. So how did they celebrate your special moment?
Well, we haven't done anything quite yet. My mom asked me a few days ago, she was like, well, what do you want to just like have a small family gathering at home? Or do you want to wait until restaurants open back up, which right now is supposed to be June 1st. But so we haven't done anything quite yet to celebrate, but in the next like week or two, we will be doing something. But I think it'll just be like a small family gathering and it'll be nice. I mean, my school did plan to reschedule our ceremony to mid-August. So I'm really hoping that actually happens because it would be nice just to kind of see the people that I'm graduating with one last time and have that little piece that would feel a little bit like closure. But I guess we'll see how things pan out.
Exactly. Things you can read everything in the news, but then, just kind of, it's up to you to filter and kind of how you want to feel about it moving forward. So Oregon's on the up and up. I mean, we started reopening some stuff, I guess Friday. We started opening stuff Friday, but then people have some mixed feelings about it. But, it's progress. It's steps.
That's exactly how it is here too. Most of our stay-at-home order is lifted at midnight tonight, and so a bunch of small businesses and stores are going to be allowed to open with restrictions, of course, tomorrow. But restaurants, gyms, and salons, that's still June 1st.
It makes you really miss those moments where you get to be in the gym and hear that really sweaty guy using the machine grunting like a gorilla. You're just like, I miss that dude. I wonder how he's doing.
Yeah, I never thought I would say that, but I'm feeling the same way. It's been interesting not being able to go to the gym for now 2 months. I mean, in the past, I've done that more so by choice, but now I feel like it's a different story being told you can't go to the gym. So now it's like, I'll be one of the first people there when it opens back up.
Yes. Well, I salute you in that endeavor to stand in a super long line, but let's get back to talking about you. So in doing some research about you, I did find some young stuff. So basically, your sixth grade video you posted recently. I want to ask, was that the earliest signs that you could think of that you want to be an on-screen presence, or is there times before that that kind of indicated that you were like, oh, I could do this, be on camera?
Yeah, it's kind of funny when you ask that because I always grew up being the middle child in my family too. So I think by nature, I mean, it's a stereotype that middle children work harder to get their parents' attention or attention of others. But for me, that was exactly the case. I was always either stirring up trouble or doing things to try to get more attention. But when I was younger, like I always wanted to be a singer or an actress, but mainly a singer. I always have loved music, and so I'd put on little concerts and things like that. And then that video you pointed out in fifth and sixth grade, me and some of my really young friends from growing up started a little web show. And so you could say that ever since, for as long as I can remember, like I'd always had the personality to kind of want to be on camera and to speak my mind and things of that nature. But it didn't really come together for me until seventh grade when I decided, like, no, like I, I still want to be on camera and get to talk to people because I love going out, meeting new people, talking to others, and I'm more of an extrovert too as it is. And so I kind of started putting together like, oh, with advice from my friend that I should go into broadcasting. And ever since then, it just has kind of stuck with me.
I read in your bio and your website that you attended the presentation from your principal in seventh grade, but then you came away with that not feeling so great. Can you kind of tell me, mentality-wise, how did you overcome the feeling, and what was that feeling?
Yeah, and that story too that I wrote in a blog post, it's something that I would always tell to everyone who asked me, but I never officially put it down in words until the other night. And so it's one of my favorite stories about myself to tell people and about my journey and everything. And I think it's unique too that at such a young age, and I've had people tell me that too, that I just knew right away what I wanted to do. And I've still kind of just stuck with it. But yeah, so going out of that presentation, when I mentioned how it was supposed to be like enlightening, and in a way it did end up being that way, but at first not so much. But yeah, so I just left that meeting. I thought I knew what I wanted to do, and then I kind of thought about it more and I was like, like, yeah, I said I wanted to be a professional volleyball player, and I'm like, I'm not good. Like, I'm not that good. And so then, yeah, we went to gym class following the meeting. That was the next class that I had. And it was roller skating day. And me and my friends didn't roller skate. We just stayed in a corner and we're just talking this particular day. And then, yeah, I had that one friend chime up and say, like, you should go into broadcasting. So at first too, I was just like, no, like, why would I do that? That's not what I want to do. And so I still was just feeling kind of discouraged, but then I thought about it more and more, and I was like, no, like that's it. Like that's what I should be doing. And so it was just kind of crazy. And even when I look back, just kind of how that unfolded for me, I probably maybe still would have come to the same conclusion that this was what I wanted to do. But it's interesting to kind of think like if I didn't have that talk with my friend that day, if it still would have happened the way it did.
Are you still in contact with that friend?
No. I think once college came, our lives just kind of shifted a little bit. And so if I were to see her and everything, I would say hi and we'd have no issues or anything. There was nothing bad that happened. There was no fallout. It was just kind of, I think we grew apart. And once we went to college, it's kind of hard sometimes to stay in touch with some people when you're moving away a few hours away.
Yeah, that natural drift when it comes to your social circles growing as you progress through school. It's hard to maintain that with your close childhood friends. But I did get the impression that you can kind of pick up a conversation right from when it left off, no matter how much the time span is. If again, let's bring it back to the scenario where like when you do see that friend again, what would you say to her in conjunction to her telling you that you could be the next Erin Andrews? What would you say to her?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm not the type of person who'd probably bring it up right away. I mean, we'd probably talk about a bunch of random other things and lead into the conversation, just kind of like, how's your life been? Like, and vice versa. And I'm sure the conversation would pick up from there. But I'd probably ask her, I'd be like, do you remember that one day when in middle school we were just in gym class and you said this to me? And I was like, yeah, like it kind of stuck with me and I'm still doing it today. And I think that you're a big part of that.
And then you can be like, I will give you the credit for the rest of my life.
Exactly.
So I did read also that you grew up a big NFL and NASCAR fan. I believe Vikings fan. And then as far as NASCAR, I'm not particularly well in depth as far as like who your favorite driver is or who the drivers are. So can you, how much of sports and telling stories or just talking to people ran into each other growing up from 7th grade on?
Well, it's really funny because actually when I was in elementary school, granted, I I had a reason for it, but when I was back in elementary school, everyone would just come to school on Monday, like especially all the guys, and they'd be talking about the Vikings game or sports and everything. And then I would just roll my eyes and be like, I hate sports. Like football's so stupid. I'm sick of people talking about this. But I also had this thing when I was younger that I always wanted to be different and I didn't want to like what everyone else liked. And so if someone said that they liked peanut butter, I'd be like, I hate peanut butter. Like, even though that may not be the case. And plus, like, I was still so young that my mind hadn't fully figured out what I like and don't like. And I think I was just kind of like a snotty little child. But so I grew up, my dad always had football on, like on Saturdays and Sundays. And my parents have been divorced since I was in first grade. So every weekend, every other weekend, I'd get to go to my dad's house. And so on Saturdays, we'd sit at home and watch college football all day. And at first, I was like, why is this on? Like, are we seriously watching this again? And granted, I was like in first grade. And then Sundays would be NASCAR races, NFL. And so we would watch that. And so the older that I got, the more like every other weekend when I was at my dad's house, the more I'd watch with him and the more like he'd explain to me what's going on and all of this stuff, the more I started to really like it. And so that kind of also helped grow my sports fandom, if you will. And plus, like, I thought it was like a way too that my dad and I really bonded because no one else in my family really liked sports. So it kind of became like our thing. But as far as sports teams go, my dad, he, like I said, he's really the only big sports fan in our family. And he's from Iowa. There's no professional sports teams in Iowa, as you know. So he kind of got to pick his own team. So for baseball, it was the Boston Red Sox.
Okay.
Football, Miami Dolphins. And he also was an avid NASCAR fan. And I can't even tell you how many replica model Jeff Gordon cars he has in his house. He has over 250. I'm not even kidding. So there's just a bunch of Jeff Gordon memorabilia everywhere in his house. And so the Minnesota Twins, I would say, are my favorite baseball team, but I have a love for the Red Sox too, just because of watching them with my dad. But as far as favorite football team, I would say now I'm more of just a general football fan. Like there are things, if this makes any sense, there's things that I love about every NFL franchise and like the history of it. So I actually grew up a Dallas Cowboys fan.
I saw that too.
Jason Witten, he was my all-time favorite NFL player. But I do like the Vikings as well. They're right up there. But like I said, I'm just kind of like a general football fan now.
Mm-hmm.
But NASCAR, Carl Edwards, he doesn't race anymore, but he was my favorite driver. Now I don't have one, but also I love Jeff Gordon too because of my dad.
Yeah, I mean, you have that history with Jeff Gordon. I mean, not like personally, but you know, you've had that emotional attached to him. So when Jason Witten went from playing tight end for the Dallas Cowboys to being the broadcaster for ESPN on Monday Night Football, how did you feel about that? You know, with him being your favorite.
Everything with Jason Witten has just been a roller coaster the past what, three years, I want to say.
Yeah.
I went from being arguably the best tight end in all of Dallas Cowboys history to deciding to retire, to going to Monday Night Football for one season, to coming out of retirement to return to the Cowboys, not probably having the best season that he's had in years past, to then going to the Raiders, it's a lot of mixed emotions. I kind of wish he would have retired as a Cowboy and not gone to the Raiders,
Mhm.
because that makes me a little sad. But I mean, it is what it is. He's
It-
still around.
yeah, the man still wanted to play, he still had that fire, which is totally fine. But maybe to carry that fire to a different franchise. There's other people that need help at the tight end position. Raiders, they probably do, but we just don't like them. They're just and
It'll be interesting to see how they do in Vegas.
And so speaking of the NFL had its draft in April, and it was a virtual one. As fans, we got to just experience it like normal. But as someone who's more really invested in the NFL, how did you feel about the virtual draft, and what were your thoughts about it?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it was a little bit of a bummer that they didn't do their original plan in Vegas. Although I was on the fence immediately, like with the draftees going up on a boat to the stage, like all of those extravagant plans. I'm like, this is too much.
Yeah.
I just thought it would take way too much time too, like the draft to be way longer than it already is.
Mhm.
And then when they just kept altering the plan, saying like, oh, no one's gonna be there, like, oh, and then they're just like, actually, we're just gonna do it all virtually. I mean, that was a bummer. Like, you don't want that to happen, but the way they did it, it was, I think, way better than anybody could have imagined. Like, it worked out really, really well. And also, all those memes that circulated of Roger Goodell between like day 1 of the draft to day 3, and
Yeah.
people are like, oh, it's midnight, he looks like he's gonna fall asleep, and there's just those pictures of him going from standing to slouching back in his chair reading the draft picks. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, so I'm a New England Patriot fan, so I take all criticism, I take all hate. It's okay. I'm a grown man. I can take it. When they, I was like, okay, he's standing up. He's progressively leaning on things. It's just fine. And then when he comes to the Patriots pick, the first time they pick, he's sitting down in his chair, like reclined, he's like about to take a nap. I'm like, okay, I get it. All right, we had the whole like bounty gate. You're probably pissed, but you don't have to take a nap during your pick, man.
I loved it. I just thought it was so funny. It really added to the virtual draft.
It did.
Making yourself at home. Plus, I thought it was really cool to see the inside of some of the head coaches' homes, or
Mhm.
even the players too. But I know, for example, like people were talking about Mike Zimmer's ranch that he has in Minnesota. I thought that was really cool too. That's not something that you normally get to see.
Yeah, and then everyone went crazy over Cliff Kingsbury's home.
Hmm.
Oh man, that is like a fortress.
Yeah.
Arizona's doing him really well. So
I would hope so.
yeah, and then I was talking with a few coworkers about this. Like already a number of draftees already prefer to do the draft at home, preferably like with their own families, which is fine. So that part I'm like not super upset about, and that was nice to see like those lower end picks, those 6th and 7th rounders, be able to see them on screen, seeing be able to, the reactions getting picked, because you don't see that, it just kind of glosses over, and that was a nice change of pace. So again, we just keep drifting off because it's so easy to talk about sports with you. Can you kind of tell me about your first time covering, which sport was your first assigned sport to cover for St. Cloud? And then how were you? And then as far as camera comfortability, I knew I was pretty solid. I was pretty stiff my first time covering for, or University of Oregon sports, up to now where I'm like, oh, getting more practice for my camera helps. What did you do to get more comfortable? What was your first sport, and how'd you feel?
The very first sport that I actually got to cover for St. Cloud was football. So it's a Division II football program. Rest in peace. It no longer is there. But I just imagine a 19-year-old girl, never been on camera before. And I mean, obviously knows the game of football, but didn't have the practice of, reciting highlights alone, doing it live on TV. And so that was very scary. I have footage still. My voice was very high pitched. I'm not smiling. I have no emotion in my face at all.
Yeah.
And just, I froze. I don't think that many people watched the broadcast. So that worked out in my favor because when the highlights were rolling, I just sat there frozen. Like, I knew in my mind what was happening, but I couldn't get the words to come out of my mouth. So I just stumbled through the entire thing. And it was traumatizing at the time. I was like, this is so embarrassing. I never want to do this ever again. Because they put me in studio for a football game. And it kind of became like a challenge that I really wanted to tackle as time went on. And I think that too is a little bit more of like a weakness that I probably do have. I just haven't done it in a while, like the in studio setting, because I've just done reporting so much. Reporting is where my heart is. It's what I want to do. I love being in the center of all the action that's going on. But with in studio, it's something that I really am striving to still get better at. Like thinking on your feet, having quick responses, being able to quickly adapt to the conversation or adjust things, all while being mindful of the time and the content that you need to get in to talk about. And so highlights, I will say I've gotten better at. So if I was in that same setting again, I probably wouldn't do as awful as I did the very first time, but just getting those reps in. I mean, that's the biggest advice that I can give to anyone who is looking to start off. Just, have the confidence in yourself for one, and know the first time you go on, you're probably not going to be very good, but you can look back on that and see. It's crazy when you look back at the first time you went on TV and then you see, every few months or so, depending on how many reps you're getting and how much progress you're making and how different you are from the very first time you were on TV. It's incredible to see. So just getting those reps in and getting on camera and practicing as much as you can, that's the most important thing that you can do.
Your studio, it has the Fox logo on it. Now, is it a partnership? How does that work? Is Fox kind of holding up that broadcasting station?
No, I wouldn't necessarily say a partnership. But over the years, I think I'm probably wrong on this, so do not quote me on the exact amount of years it's been, but I think for the past 15, 20-ish years or so, our hockey broadcast, St. Cloud State's a huge hockey school, so most of the stuff, if you've seen my reel or anything, or what I've posted on social media, most of it is hockey related. And so our hockey broadcast has been around for about 25 years, covering the men's hockey team primarily, and we've done a few women's games here and there as well. But over the course of like I said, 15 to 20-ish years, Fox Sports North, because if you've seen any bit of our TV station, I mean, it's state of the art, it's top notch. Like all of the equipment is nearly brand new at St. Cloud State, and even news directors from around the country or from around Minnesota and everything too will come up and they'll look around our station for a tour, and they're just like, you guys are spoiled. Like, this is way better than anything that we have at nearly any station, local news station in the country. And alumni will come back and say the same exact thing too. So, I mean, we are really spoiled. And even when I interned at a TV station, a local news station in my hometown, they did not nearly have as nice of equipment as we had at our university. So we got really, really lucky with that. But our studio, our control rooms, they're all top notch. And so that was one aspect that I think really impressed Fox Sports North, and just the people that we've had come through our program. We've had renowned broadcasters that are all across the country now come through our program, and just the relationship too that our faculty have been able to build over the years with Fox Sports North. They kind of have just trusted us they'll just take our broadcast. They won't send anyone up to St. Cloud. It's all student ran with the exception of our play-by-play and color broadcaster. Those are professionals. But other than that, it is all student ran, like student director, technical director, student producer, all student ran. And just because they know how good our program is, they just take our feed and air it on their network.
Oh, so I assume you had time behind the camera as far as like operating the camera and in the boardroom. What would you say was your favorite outside of being in front of the camera? What was your favorite behind the camera stuff you did?
Well, I don't know if this counts either. This might be going a little bit more on camera, but I'll give you like two examples. One of my other favorite things to do behind the scenes is create feature stories. So I've been really lucky. I don't know if you know who Jimmy Schultz is, for example. He was drafted into the Vegas Knights organization. He was the captain at St. Cloud State for 3 years. I got to go to his home in Minnetonka a couple years ago and interview his parents, interview his brothers. And it turned out to be this really, really cool story that I'm still really proud of. So just getting to do experiences like that, like getting to go into these players' homes, figure out or find out and talk to the people who helped them along the way, figure out where they came from and tell the story, like those lighthearted stories like that are my favorite things to do. And I love sitting down and editing it and putting it together and seeing a vision kind of come to life. But I think my favorite behind the scenes moment was, yeah, I mean, we don't get to go, you don't get to be a freshman never having really touched a camera and just get to go on air right away. I mean, you did for news, but for our hockey broadcast, not for that. You kind of have to work your way up, and because that's more of like the prestigious position, I guess, if you will, like the highest that you can get up in the broadcasting department there, if you will. But yeah, so my freshman year, I worked production. So I interviewed and was given the position of game camera for our hockey broadcasts. I was awful. I lost so many times. And that went live on TV. And I just remember having producers yell at me, like, where's the puck? Where's the puck? And then I would go home and cry some nights. And then like some games I'd be so scared to go and do it and all of that and actually just work a game. I'd be so scared because I just knew I was not going to do good. I was going to get yelled at. Eventually, I ended up getting let go from game camera and transferred to another position. So I mean, that was good. Like, you got to try something, and if it didn't work out, you got to move to a different position, something that was a better fit. So then I did utility for a season. So I just did a bunch of the behind the scenes stuff, and that was also my way to kind of, you know, learn from the current rinkside reporter. I was down at the rink. That's where I wanted to be because, like I mentioned, like I love being where all the action is. And so I got to learn the position of ice side and like what all went into it and seeing it firsthand without having to do it myself as a sophomore, if that makes sense. So it was basically like I just got to shadow my ideal position the whole season. But it was fun. Just, I mean, those early stages, you still had responsibility, don't get me wrong, but there wasn't as much pressure. And the crew, we all got so close those first I mean, all the years that I was a part of it, we did, but those first couple years were special because we were just bright-eyed 19, 20-year-olds, not having no clue what we're doing. We just know what we want to do, trying to work our way up to it. And those years were fun.
Yeah, I remember. So our conference is the Pac-12 network. So they did a kind of training for all of the broadcast students and all of the journalism students. So I remember I was part of that training. I got to work the camera, and they got to really see how far that zoom goes. So then you also mentioned that you went to your local broadcast station. Was it UTVS?
Where I interned or the TV station at our school?
Where you interned outside of school?
It was KTTC in Rochester. So I spent 3 months over a summer working there as basically I was a news multimedia journalist. So they sent me out into the field on my own. I got to drive the company cars by myself.
Hey.
And so they let me use all the equipment. I'd go out, shoot interviews out in the public and everything. Then I'd come back to the station on a deadline before whichever newscast and get everything edited. We used the Edius software at their station. And then I'd write the script for it, put it in the broadcast. And so I basically did everything that you could do there without being on camera myself.
Okay. And that was that different editing program than what you use at school? Like, how was that learning curve?
At school, we used Adobe Premiere, and Adobe Premiere, it's so much easier to use. So using Edius, it was a lot more difficult and not as easy to use, but I was able to learn the basics decently quick.
Oh, but you know, you got to learn the basics. You get to get some on-screen time. You even got to host a couple shows. You know, you got the WCHA Women's Hockey League. Can you kind of tell me about that one?
Yeah, so that was actually at St. Cloud State, and it was my junior year. So I took 5 years at St. Cloud State. So I took a little bit of a detour or a longer path to finish everything up, if you will, which ended up being the best thing that I could have done for myself, in my opinion. But so that was my junior year. So that was 2.5 years ago now, almost, when I got that position. And so basically how I think I ended up getting that was an idea from our executive producer, who's actually a professional. He owns his own satellite company, and he just comes up to St. Cloud State to do the hockey broadcasts. And he used to be like an adjunct professor or faculty. But so I had auditioned to get the rinkside reporter for the first 3 years at my time there. So freshman, sophomore, and junior year. I didn't get it any of those years, which usually if you're an upperclassman, you've kind of learned what you can learn and worked your way up to it. So you typically deserve it more as an upperclassman. And just +2, the people who had the position before me are all so talented. Taylor Budd, she works as a weekend sports anchor in Fargo, North Dakota. Bobby Bolig works for Fox Sports North. And then Katie Emmer, who also had it before me, if you know her at all. She worked for Fox Sports North as her first job out of college, and now works for NBC Sports out in Philadelphia covering the Flyers. So there was a lot of talent that came before me. And so I didn't get it those first 3 years. But the executive producer of the broadcast, he called me and he goes, like, you didn't get it this time, but there's this other role that I think you should do that you would be great at. And it was a new thing. It was the very first time that the league had ever done it, or that it had been offered at St. Cloud State. And that was to be like a social media host for the WCHA Women's League, covering just basically like a weekly recap of what went on and picking like who kind of stood out, what the top plays were. So it was a really, really unique experience. And that also helped me work on highlights as well, that I had mentioned that I wanted to get better at in studio. And it was really difficult at first, I'm not going to lie, because it had never been done before. I didn't know what the format should be. I didn't know how I was going to go about compiling like a 3-minute episode each week. And I had to edit it all myself too, and then record it and write the scripts. Like, I did basically everything. Granted, I also worked with the person who worked for communications with the league. So we'd communicate regularly, and he would tell me what plays he thought really stood out that should go into the show. And he had final approval on if there was anything I should fix before it aired on their social channels. So he was great in helping me, and the communication was awesome. But as far as editing it to make it look good, and it was difficult, but at the same time it was so much fun, just kind of getting to create something from scratch and seeing it come to life. So that was a really great experience that I'm thankful for.
Yeah. So outside of that gentleman, where did you go to get some support when you were unsure about how this looks or what to put in? What was your support system like during the whole process?
Well, there's a lot of talented people that go to St. Cloud, not even on just the on-air side, but also on the production side. So there was this one person named Chris Pearson, who is very, very talented when it comes to graphics. I am not talented when it comes to like designing graphics. So I went to him one day and I was like, hey, I need graphics for this show. Could you help me design some? In like 10-15 minutes, he designed graphics, and that's what we used. And that was a huge help. That was like a big obstacle that I didn't think I'd be able to solve on my own. And so he did a lot to help me out there. And then there was just, if I needed to film, I could go around the newsroom. Anyone that was around, just ask them like, hey, can you help me film this really quick? It'll take like 10 minutes. But other than that, I mean, it was just kind of trying to figure out how I wanted it to look, and how Matt, the person I was in communication with, wanted it to look too, so that it looked professional and nice. But I also had a lot of creative freedom with it too. Like, there was a couple of times where I wasn't in the studio and I went like on scene. Like when Hockey Day Minnesota was in St. Cloud, the women's team was playing another team in the WCHA for Hockey Day Minnesota at the outside rink. I took a camera and did basically a stand-up, which ended up being like chopped up to little bits, introing different parts of the show at the rink in St. Cloud where they were going to be playing. So they gave me a lot of creative freedom, and so that was a lot of fun.
There you go. I was going to ask you about, being a sideline, that's not sideline reporter, it's rink reporter. Is that the proper terminology for being?
Yeah, we called it ice side reporter, but ringside, same thing.
The two gentlemen, they usually clash alongside that barrier. What were your nerves like? How did you try not to get too, shook, to use the terminology, when two players knocked into each other alongside that ringside or the glass, and you had to stay, poised?
Yeah. So there was, for most of the game, I'd stand on the bench, but also, when you're wearing professional outfits, it gets, plus the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center is one of the coldest rinks I've ever been in. So it got really cold really fast on the bench. I'd spend as much time standing on the bench as I could because, one, it's a good view. You're right there. A lot of my hits took place on the bench. And plus, who gets to really stand on a bench at a hockey game? So it was just really cool. And that was, again, one of the aspects that I love about reporting. You're just right there when everything's happening. But for half the game, too, I'd stand alongside the glass right behind one of the nets. And anytime, a puck hit the glass, especially during warm-ups, it didn't matter how many times I'd stood there, I still jumped. It would still startle me even though I knew it was happening. But I think the scariest thing standing on the bench, I never necessarily got in the way of any guys. No guys ever toppled over the boards. Mm-hmm. But there was a couple of close encounters where a puck was flying and almost hit me in the head. Oh. That was the scariest thing.
I'm sure you can wear a helmet for a segment just to say how protective these things are.
I should. I never thought of doing that, but I should have done that.
Give me credit. You can give me credit later.
I will.
So, you also went on to, after getting the league going, the Women's Hockey League, which again, it's for me doing a podcast like this and doing all the edits myself and getting, let's say, my dad to look it over, and he's probably my harshest critic. Mm-hmm. That's a testament in itself to really put that energy and effort into, along with school and trying to move on with life as far as getting a professional career. So I applaud you on that. But then you also got a Crunch Time sports debate show going. You were a busy woman.
Yeah, that was the great thing about the program that we have at St. Cloud State. You can do so many different things. And so I did spend a season for the debate show, Crunch Time. It's Around the Horn on ESPN. Mm-hmm. And so I was the host of it. I think it was during my sophomore year. And that show has come a long, long ways from where it first was. And it's just gotten so much better, each and every season that they've done it. So that just goes to speak to all the guys in our program too, the producers, the people who work on the graphics behind the scenes. They have done a phenomenal job getting it to where it was. But my sophomore year, still just kind of the early stages of it, getting things figured out. It was fun. It was a fun show to be on. Mm-hmm. And I think I got not yelled at, but scolded a couple times because as the host, I don't think I was really supposed to share my opinions. Granted, I also, there are some things I'm not going to sit there and say that I knew everything, that
no, of course.
Every little detail about, what was being talked about. Because, for example, we talked a lot about the NBA. I will be honest, I don't follow the NBA that closely. And so I think some of the guys got frustrated with me because I was supposed to award points for best argument. And so if an NBA topic was on, I'd be like, Nick, point to you. And then the other guys would be like, are you kidding me? Are you joking? But it was fun. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, I got scolded a couple of times, I think, when it came to hockey or football for sharing my opinions more than I was supposed to as a host.
That's what's great about podcasting. You can share your opinions. You can open up a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah, because the one video clip I saw, you were wearing a Baker Mayfield jersey, which was a little odd to me.
But... Yeah, that was our show Sidelines. So
Sidelines.
Yeah, that's another radio kind of sports debate show, but more just kind of like an open forum to share like your opinions on topics. And so that was in conjunction with our campus radio station. And you wear a jersey for every episode that you're on. It's just kind of laid back, fun
Sure.
sports talk show. But yes, I was a big Baker Mayfield fan.
A big Baker Mayfield fan. What was it about him? And I also found out that you were a podcast host for 2018, The Morning Sip. I listened to a couple episodes. There was one, I believe, it was episode, I want to say 2 or 3. We had a gentleman on. You guys were gushing about Baker Mayfield. So can you kind of tell me, what is it about his demeanor that makes you gravitate towards him?
Yeah, well, I think that was my friend Jeremy that I was talking about Baker Mayfield with. And he is the biggest sports fan I think I've ever met in my entire life. Like, if the Vikings lose, he is very passionate about the Vikings. He will go a day or two without talking to anybody. I'm not kidding. Like, he is a diehard fan. But yeah, I grew up watching college football, like I said, with my dad, and one of the teams that I gravitated towards early on was the Oklahoma Sooners.
Mm-hmm.
And Baker Mayfield, quarterback for the Sooners. And I think it was just his whole story, like being a walk-on, how he kind of defied the odds, and also just his big personality and how he was not afraid to speak his mind on any topics or anything, and just a big team guy. So I think those were some of the big things that I really liked about him. And so, yeah, I bought a Mayfield jersey.
Now, how much of that story makes you want to be like that, coming from the school, trying to make it big, maybe being underviewed, not just because, you're an up and coming person, getting to the sports field, but, just because, female reporters are becoming a more and more prominent aspect in networks. How do you take Baker Mayfield's story and kind of twist it to your own going forward from here?
Well, I mean, I think any story, and there's some of my favorite stories, like, for example, not even just Baker Mayfield, but, when you see a lot of professional football players, like, not all of them, but like a handful of them grew up in not so great situations, grew up super poor, rough conditions, not living in great neighborhoods, literally came from nothing. Like, half the time, some of the stories I've read, like, they have a single mom, they've got to support their family, and they were never expected to go anywhere. And then you see them, like, for example, like, I think there's a guy, I can't remember his name, but a guy on the Ravens ended up winning a Super Bowl. I actually think, now that I'm saying this, it was Michael Orr from The Blind Side. So I think I'm just
Yep.
like, telling his story right now. But stories like that, those are some of my favorite ever to listen to. I've never had the chance to cover a story like that yet, but I think that is also just what I love about the game of football, because I think more times than not, that's a lot of people's stories. They came from nothing and worked their way up to be a remarkable player, and then, giving back to their families, supporting, their upbringing, or being advocates for where they grew up from to just kind of support the younger generation. So those are some of my favorite stories, and I think they're just so inspiring, and just kind of goes to show that no matter where you came from, what your upbringing was, you can turn it around and make yourself into something. And so I think too, like, as far as like Baker Mayfield goes, no one, I can't say no one believed in him, but he was just a very unlikely story, and turned it around and became a first overall pick in the draft a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So, he has that drive, which, even just by talking to you for almost an hour now, I could see that you have that same fire in you. And I wanted to bring up a tweet from yourself that I screenshot. It's nothing bad, I promise you. It is from, I believe, February 11th of this year, where you won the Award of Excellence, the first female, the only female to win that category. How do you feel about that? And again, how do you feel that this kind of, propels you, sets you in the right direction towards a major career in this field?
Yeah, so the award you're talking about, it was an award of excellence for the talent category for sports at the BEA. So it's a national competition for sportscasters in college around the country. So I, you know, our university has participated in that competition for years, just students submitting. And one of my counterparts, someone who, I came in with my freshman year, who's one of my good friends, he took first place in that competition a few years ago. Then Katie, that same year, who I brought up earlier, she took, I believe it was second place that same exact year. And we've just had a number of people from our program place in that. And it was always something that I really wanted to get, I guess, recognition for, because, I was also determined, like, all these people from our program are placing in this, like, why can't I? And so I actually this year, like, I wasn't gonna submit anything to it because even though, like, I really wanted to try to win something for it, I just counted myself out. I didn't think that I was going to get anything, and I was like, I'm just gonna kind of get my hopes up and not get anything for it, because I'd entered in it a couple years ago. I think it was my sophomore year. Granted, my stuff sophomore year was not good. And so I didn't place a couple years ago, which is fine, completely fine. And I got good feedback in return for it, things that I improved upon. But this year, yeah, I got off work at Texas Roadhouse one night, and it was the final night to submit. And I was like, you know what? If I don't submit to this, like, I'm going to regret it. So, and I was super tired. I was like, I just kind of really want to go to bed right now. And I was like, no, like, do it. So I drove straight from work to the newsroom, edited my reel and submitted it. And I just didn't kind of think about it again. And then I was sitting in the newsroom one day, and the results actually came back earlier than they were supposed to. And I got a text from my friend Paige, and she goes, look at the email right now. And so I looked at it, and it was first, second, third place, and I got the award of excellence, which is basically just like an honorable mention for the category. But still, I was not expecting that at all. But to also, it didn't really hit me right away that the first, second, and third place winners were guys. So it wasn't until one of my female friends, who also graduated a couple of years ago from St. Cloud, texted me, and she saw that it got posted that I was mentioned in the awards. And she's like, you're the only girl that got recognition in this. Like, that's huge. Congratulations. So the more I thought about it, the more I was like, okay, like, that is pretty cool. It's something to be proud of. So it wasn't something that I was expecting and that I had originally counted myself out of. So it was really nice to have seen that I got that.
That's awesome. What'd your family say when you showed them that you got this award?
I think I texted my mom and brother right away, and they were proud of me. I mean, I think my mom, they kind of play it a little bit lower key, but my mom will go and, like, show videos that I do and all of this stuff to her random coworkers at work. And
Yeah.
so I know, even though sometimes they don't give right away, like, they said congratulations and they were proud and everything right away, don't get me wrong, but I think sometimes it's a little lower key of a reaction, but I know at the end of the day, like, they're very proud of me.
Yeah, mothers, they are the biggest supporters. So, she's listened to my 3 episodes. We'll probably listen to yours. And I'm just like, they're like an hour or so. That's a lot of time out of your day, but it's like, she wants to do it. You gotta applaud that.
My mom's the same way.
So my last question, you mentioned in the beginning that, your guys' stay-at-home is going to be lifted around early June. How are you preparing yourself to kind of hit that job field up and going as hard as possible and to get ready for once the world opens up again?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that was on my mind for the past few weeks, and I was stressed about it, don't get me wrong, because one of the classes I was taking was hard. And so my biggest thing for the past few weeks was just graduate, like, focus on graduating. So I felt like any extra time I had needed to go into school, like studying, even though some days it didn't work out that way because I would get distracted by my phone or something else. Sure. Yes, my biggest thing was focusing on graduating. So now that I've done that, then I need to move out of my apartment because I'm very stressed about that still. And I don't want to get charged anymore when I'm not living there. And so I moved out. I'm almost completely organized, unpacked, back at my mom's. So now that that is all out of the way, I'm ready now to focus on, like what's next and doing some more things that I'm actually very passionate about. So I'm planning to starting tomorrow, because now I'm in the mindset like I need to try to get back into like a work schedule, even though I'm not currently working. It's like Monday through Friday, like doing things that help me get better or advance like in my career, and then the weekends for whatever else I need to do. So I think right now just planning to network, and I'm trying to get my website officially all updated. I made a blog post the other day, so I think I'm going to write a few more of those. I get enjoyment out of that, and I used to do it a lot more when I was younger.
Yeah.
And so yeah, just I think networking, trying to get my work that I have done out there a little bit more, and yeah, just kind of figuring it out as I go. As far as like the job hunt goes, I can't say too much about it because I don't know what's happening right now. It's not official. And also, if I say like, "Oh, this is what I've been talking to," and I don't get it, I think that would be very embarrassing. So I don't want to say too much. But there has been somewhere that I have been talking to for the past couple of months, and it seems promising. But right now, with the current conditions, there's a hiring freeze,
Sure.
and so it's just kind of a waiting game. So I'm just kind of waiting to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see you on the sidelines for the New England Patriots against.
I mean, I wouldn't say no if that happened, but we'll see.
Perfect. Kirsten, see, I got that. Thank you again so much for stopping by. And I'm just so grateful to you, appreciative to you for taking time out of your busy day to again talk to someone on almost the other side of the country. So
thanks for having me. It was fun, and I mean, my schedule is so busy right now.
It's so busy.
Not working or anything, just kind of living back at home. So
Thank you so much for sticking around until the end. Do you have any follow-up questions for the guest? Put them in the comments below, and I will work to get them answered for you. For more content from KC Media, please follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And for more interviews from Keoni Chats, please follow us on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. Until then, guys, see you then.